All right, guys, welcome back. What's up? Three broken chairs.
How y'all doing today? How we doing? We got a special guest in the house today. Welcome Mel, Pastor Mel. Tell us where you're from, Mel. Tell us your name, what you're doing with yourself, what's going on.
I am Melody Smith, better known as Pastor Mel, and I pastor the Gathering, which is one church with two campuses here in Parkersburg. So, I like to. I feel like I pastor two churches because I'm busy all the time, but we are essentially one church in nature that just has two different locations, one on the south side and one on north end.
Where exactly are you located on either one?
So our south side is at 514 Myrtle Street. And I tell people the best way is it's right behind Broadway Sandwich Shop.
There you
so
go.
Oh, okay.
Everybody knows where that is. So
everybody local knows where Broadway
Sandwich Shop. I can see
Sandwich
the hot
Shop.
dogs from my front porch. So that is a blessing.
What do you think about the chili?
I am a big fan.
Heard.
Big fan.
So the north side location.
The north end location is on the corner of 14th and Latrobe.
Okay.
So kind of in a rough spot of town, an area of town that doesn't have the best reputation, but it is the perfect place to do ministry. So
Right. You could say that's exactly where you would need to be to do God's work.
My worship leader Angie says all the time, if Jesus was here today, he'd be serving on 14th Street. That's where he would be called. So.
And
definitely.
Eric, I know you've been doing a lot of work with Mel, actually. I know you've been working with her extensively here in the past couple months, man.
Well, yeah, we just brought you over there for the first time last week. Tell me about that.
We touched on that last week, like you said, man. That was a great experience. We served, 275 people in about an hour and a half, 2 hours? I mean, it was wonderful. We were moving.
Wasn't even 2 hours, man.
It wasn't even 2 hours?
It's an hour,
It's an hour 15 if you want to call it that, yeah. It's only an hour that we do it.
It really was. I appreciate the opportunity, the experience. I mean, you guys really do have a nice little setup.
Yeah,
the kitchen looks really good. I mean, the way you guys operate.
It's small, but we make it work. So,
operational is what we like to say.
It is operational. You're right.
Operational.
That's right.
Well, and then I've been going there for like the past 6 weeks, maybe
something like that.
8 weeks, something like that. Yeah, it's been really fun. It's been really cool to see how you guys do everything and see like the growth. But I know you were kind of telling me before when I was first showing up that you were serving like 80 people.
Right.
60 people, 80 people. 100. Wow. Big day was 120.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We blew past 120.
Yep, absolutely.
So what happened to the days of 120? I mean, and like before, I mean, so how did you get two churches?
Well, okay, so kind of starting from the beginning, I was the children's pastor at a church on South Side, Holy and Community Church, and the kids that we were serving, we were driving over to North End and picking up all these kids and taking them over to South Side. So the 14th Street Church where we are now, it was a Wesleyan church, which is the same denomination we are. It had just a handful of older people left in it. They really weren't doing anything other than just meeting on Sundays. And so when their pastor retired, they voted to just close the church. And so they called me and said, you're already driving past here and picking up all these kids. Do you want to just use this building? You can have it for free. And I was like, I do. I do actually want that very much. And so they gave us that building. And so at the time, I was still doing children's ministry in the morning at the Southside Church and then preaching in the afternoon at the 14th Street Church. But it also kind of turned into a mission center, sort of. So, I mean, we are having church and still are having church there, like a regular worship service every Sunday at 3, which is kind of cool because, one, it freed me up to still be able to do morning church, but 3 o'clock is a cool time to have church because it's not, two things about it. One, a lot of people in that neighborhood are not morning people, and we learned that real quick right off the bat. The first time we tried to do a clothing giveaway, we did it at 10 in the morning. We had 2 people come.
Oh, wow.
So we figured out real quick people in that neighborhood do not like to get up in the morning. So having church in the afternoon kind of gave them that, okay, well, I can sleep till noon, get up, eat some lunch, and then come to church.
There you go.
And then the other thing that's really cool about it is that most established churches in Parkersburg have a morning service and an evening service. So by falling in at 3, it frees up people that are already a member of a different church somewhere to kind of stop in some weekend and visit us, and that happens a lot. And it's really cool because then they can come and see kind of what we've got going on and how they want to plug in. And
bit of the mid-range.
yeah, so that worked out really well. So, but it really is, for a long time, it was more of a mission center than it was a church focus. So we did, at that time, this was before John 6 got involved. So we were doing the community meals, but we were doing them once a month. So the last Saturday of every month, we would do a community meal and the clothing giveaway.
So that was like immediately as soon as you guys got in the church.
Yeah, so as soon as we started, we were doing that. This was before coronavirus, so it was always
when did this
more.
start?
We've been there for 2 years and 2 months. So
okay.
Yeah, so a
Gotcha.
little over 2 years ago. But in the beginning, before coronavirus,
yeah,
the goal was really more about community building and fellowship than it was about feeding people.
Sure.
So
well, like you're meeting these people, and then you're like,
Right.
hey, come back on Sunday. And
right.
Like, come.
And so it was a lot of, like, if it was nice outside, we would do the meals outside, but we always had tables set up, and it was nothing like what it's like now. So now they walk up and they get their bag and they roll out. But before, we would have, like, I wish I had pictures to show you guys, but we would do, I guess it's a radio show, so it doesn't really.
Well, if you can find them, we'll put them
But
up.
yeah, I could give you some, but we would have, the yard would just be filled with people sitting and eating
Yeah,
together.
we'll put those
and
pictures up now.
Yeah, we would
Yeah, there you
have cornhole boards, and the kids in the fall, the kids would paint pumpkins, or there was always some kind of activity in addition, because it was more about, and actually the funniest thing about that is my senior pastor, the very first time it was probably 2 or 3 months into doing this, and he stopped by to one, and he is he's very conservative, very different.
Straight
from,
tie.
Yes,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
straight tie kind of. So that's not really his crowd. Not that he judges those people or he doesn't love those people, but he just doesn't feel.
Just not the business.
He
Comfortable.
doesn't feel comfortable, and he doesn't feel like he really is effective at ministering to people like that,
Right.
because they look at him and they're like, whoa,
Sure.
the cops are here, kind of thing.
We can't level
So-
with them. Yeah.
Right.
You can't share experiences.
So he was kind of distancing himself on purpose.
Sure.
Understood.
But the first time he stopped by, and he did stop by this dinner, and everybody's on the lawn, and we're all eating together. The next day he messaged me, and he said it really shocked him how much it felt like every church potluck dinner he'd ever been to in 50 years. That it just felt like, and in that community,
We're all
that's
brothers.
really different.
Yeah.
They're not used to having that kind of, I know my neighbors, and I can, so it was kind of building community more than it was about feeding people.
Enjoying the neighborhood a little
But
bit,
then, of
you know?
course, coronavirus came along
Of
and
course.
took that away from us.
How
But
exactly did that impact you? What did you guys see as a result of that?
it is, so we do the community meal, but we also do, because of the coronavirus, we started delivering groceries to people, because we have it started as, we had a lot of families that have a bunch of kids and don't have transportation.
Sure.
So, the schools were providing food, but if you have 6 kids and no car, you can't walk 4 miles to the closest school and carry all these boxes back.
Right.
So we started delivering groceries, and then the word kind of spread about that.
Excuse me.
And then we were getting people calling and saying, hey, my neighbor is elderly and I haven't seen them leave their house since this started. Can you check
Aw.
on them and see if they have food? And
That's sad.
so that
Yeah,
kind of blew up. And so at the beginning of the coronavirus, we were serving 270 families a week.
Oh, wow.
Just dropping.
Whoa.
We would literally have a list of all of these addresses, and I would try to break them up in chunks. So
And this is
Monday
all
we would
funded
do-
by donation.
Yes, it was all funded by donation. So
And the people on
Good.
this were by request, I'm assuming?
we're by request.
Okay.
And so then, of course, at that time, that's all we were doing. We quit the community meals because nobody,
Is that when John got involved?
John had been coming for about a month before the coronavirus. So
Okay.
he came and he did like 4 weekends in a row, and then we had to shut down. But he immediately, he was very flexible, and I was like, we can't do this right now, but we're doing this instead. And then he
Sure.
just jumped right in there and
Yeah.
started, he shifted his focus. And
Because I remembered talking to him on one of our first podcasts about that.
Yeah.
he was mentioning giving all these going out and doing the groceries and doing
he would deliver, he'd come 3-4 days a week and help deliver. He was, getting a lot of the donations.
But you guys are still doing that to a smaller degree?
We are still doing that. So it was really, really big, like I said, in the beginning. But you remember, in the beginning, it was a lot different than it is now. So people were genuinely terrified to leave their house.
And is that why you guys started doing the weekly lunches?
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. So, we were kind of doing those monthly, and then when John came, he was like, I want to do this every week. Because he doesn't do anything small. Right. So,
he's got a face.
He does like to do things big. So we were, like I said, we had just started doing the weekly and then dropped out. But it was it's the first time in 10 years that I've done ministry that I had people calling me saying, hey, we really appreciated that, but we're back to work now and we don't need any more. And so the list was like 270, and then every week it started to kind of fizzle out.
That's so nice, though.
Right, and it's different because I'm used to serving a kind of person who
might be a little greedier.
Right.
Sure.
And they are, they were raised to be takers a lot of times. So this was really the first time I ever kind of saw that, like somebody saying, hey, thank you, but I don't need that anymore.
Well, not even like to a fault, but it's just like it being a taker because they're not used to being given to.
Right.
So when someone gives, they need to take it and keep it because it's not going to be given a lot.
It's a survival mentality. Exactly. They, they don't.
Some of the work
right.
Done,
Right. But what it showed me was that we were serving a different group of people. In addition to the ones that we always served, we were also reaching a different kind of, economic class of people, like people who really were just impacted by that virus. It's not, this isn't what, and that's hard. I think it's sometimes harder for somebody like that to reach out and say, can this food pantry help me? Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? There are some people who are comfortable saying, we always struggle. Yeah. I need the food pantry. And then there are other people who are like, I have never had to use a food pantry in my life.
Yeah, where's a food pantry?
Right. This is hard for me. And so it was good to see that. And then, so the number really just kept dropping as things started to open back up and people started going back to work. The numbers started dropping, and we got down to, we were doing maybe 50 deliveries a month, and then, or 50 deliveries a week, and then we had a pickup where they could come to the church and pick up, and we were giving away 20 or 30 there, so probably around 75 a week.
Sure.
And then about 3 weeks ago, it just exploded again. And so last week we gave away 190 bags of groceries, and that number is going to just keep going up, I have a feeling. So so what we are doing now is we deliver 16 on Mondays to Belbury. Okay. We do a pickup at the 14th Street Church on Tuesdays, and we usually, one week we had 84 people come to that. On Wednesdays we deliver, our delivery list yesterday was 88. And then today is Thursday, and on Thursdays we do a pickup at the Southside campus. It's a little bit smaller. It's usually about 20-25. So
when's the pickup at the Southside campus?
Today, on Thursdays at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock,
Yep.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's what we've got going on right now, is we're seeing that increase in families needing the groceries, but we're also seeing that increase in the Saturday meals, which you guys witnessed this past week. That that need just keeps.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy that it's coming back around.
Yeah.
Now, where all do you guys extend your reach to? Where all?
Anywhere that. Anyone that calls me, I mean, we have made trips to Ward County. We've made trips to, I know
John even mentioned something about Torch, Ohio.
Yeah, we have some.
Yeah, Molly's Pet Pantry goes out there to service the cat shelter out there.
Yeah.
The cat shelter then.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yes,
That's
people will call us. It's really funny that you ask that, because one of the craziest, this is just kind of my how God works thing.
Sure.
A lady that I know messaged me when we first started doing this and said, I have a friend from high school. He doesn't live here in town anymore, but he has been messaging me, and he just told me that they are so hungry that they're eating cat food. and they don't have transportation. They don't have a way out. They have kids in the house.
Oh my goodness.
And my reaction exactly. I'm thinking,
my.
But they don't live here. And I'm like, so I said, where do they live?
We got to go.
She said somewhere in Ohio. So I said, okay, well, find out where it is. And my initial thought was, I'm part of a denomination. I'm a Wesleyan. So my initial thought was, find out where it is, and I will find the closest Wesleyan pastor to them, and I'll send them there. She calls me back, and the address where this guy lives is 5 minutes away from my sister's house in Louisville, Ohio.
Wow.
So I call my sister, and I mean, it's like a 2-minute conversation, and my sister and her husband and their 2 kids loaded up their van with groceries and went and delivered to this family. And it was really funny because she sent me a picture of the groceries, and then she said, I got all this, but I'm also stopping to get a dozen donuts because I'm not a monster. so they got, they were able to bless this family and take care of them. But it's just so funny that of all the places in the world that this person could live, and that's what I mean. That is the provision of God. That's what He does. He puts people. There was a reason He sent that message to that girl, and there was a reason she felt. To call me about it. And
so you've mentioned the Wesleyan denomination a couple times. What is that?
So denominations are basically, some people kind of frown on denominations, but it's really just an alliance of churches that we believe the same way. This is, this is what our doctrine says, and really the idea behind a denomination is it gives you a network.
Sure.
So I have, in a
we
situation
agree on the
like
same
that,
morals,
right?
the same
In a situation like that, I could call a Wesleyan pastor in Ohio and be like, hey, and we have that open door connection we're from the same denomination. We
do the same thing.
We're doing the same thing. I have a family here that needs you, kind of thing.
But you couldn't just call like a Christian pastor?
You could, but it kind of gives you that. It's like you could call a 7-Eleven manager and say something, but you could call a Speedway manager and get what you need a lot faster because you know what I'm saying?
That's a really good way.
Okay.
That makes sense.
That's a really good way.
That makes sense.
Exactly. So it's like, we're doing the same thing. We're serving on the same team. This is who we are. So, but the Wesleyan Church itself is a split off from the Methodist Church. So right around the time of the Civil War, there were the Methodist Church kind of wanted to be middle of the road. Yeah. They obviously weren't pro-slavery because I don't think you can read the Bible and be pro-slavery, but they also didn't want to speak out against it because they had a lot of Southern, slaveholders that were invested, and they didn't want to upset or trouble the water. But there was a group of Methodist pastors who just we can't not speak out against it, and so they split away from the Methodist Church and began the Wesleyan Methodist Church is what it started as, but then as time went on, we kind of dropped
You're saying there was like one guy, and that's how...
there is a leader, his name was Orange Scott, but there was a group of pastors that kind of went with him and left and created their own denomination.
The one being the spark, if
yes,
you will.
Yeah, and that's how it always is. It always takes one to say.
Yeah. How did it get the name?
So John Wesley is he's a preacher from England, and he is who started the Methodist Church. And so when they split off from the Methodists, they decided they were doing it more Wesley's way, so they were going to be the Wesleyan Methodists.
Okay.
And so eventually we dropped the Methodist part and just became the Wesleyan Church.
Okay.
So.
Gotcha.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I was actually raised Methodist.
Okay, so you've heard of John Wesley then, I'm sure. So and it's funny because John Wesley was... he was very, very much a social activist. He spoke out against slavery. He was a very big proponent for like women in ministry and all of those things that kind of troubled the waters. That's who he was. So that's kind of in our spirit. The Wesleyan spirit is kind of
making a little bit more sense for me now.
A little social justice mixed in our DNA there.
Gotcha.
So,
that's cool.
Yeah. That is really cool. Actually.
How do you even become a pastor? I mean,
I
was like,
you have to fail out of college first. You have to try to do some other things and be really bad at them. It is
like, how do you even become a pastor, let alone afford 2 churches? Like, how do you fund? I don't understand.
You don't. So it's a little complex. So part of it is it's a calling. It's not a job.
Sure.
So, you really have to be called to do it. It's not you are literally carrying the burdens of everybody most of the time when you pastor. So it's something that you really, truly have to be called to do. If God had just called me to be a pastor, I would have slammed the door in his face and took off running as far as because it was never on my radar. But he kind of took me in through the back door. So it started as I love kids. I'm a kid person. I mean, I am basically an adult child. So I can do kids.
I've heard that once or twice too.
I can do kids all day, any day. I would much rather be around kids than adults most of the time. And so it started in children's ministry. But then the longer I did that, the more I started to see that, especially with the kids that I was serving, you can serve them best by ministering to their whole family. So like I can take Junior on Wednesday and Sunday and pour into that kid, but the rest of the week, if he's going back to a crack house where they're fighting and beating him, it's not really effective. But if I can minister to Junior's family too and pour into them, then I can change that kid's life.
Kids like talking about stuff that they learn too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so
like in a good home, you'd be like, hey, you remember that thing we learned at church?
Absolutely.
This Wednesday you guys weren't there. But today, the pastor that I had on Wednesday talked about this and that. Well, you guys weren't there. Oh, that's really neat. And then they get to talk
that
about it. That
happens a lot. And so what we saw was exactly that, kids going back home and ministering to their families. And then we tried to do a lot of like outreach things that would bring parents in. So the Christmas program every year, like you think of church and a big Sunday, you always think of Easter, right?
Yeah.
Our Easter program, our Easter Sunday, we would maybe have 90, 100 people on Sundays. For our Christmas program, we'd have 150, 160, have to put seats out behind because parents will come to watch their kid be in a program.
That's cool.
And so we would think about different things like that we could do to incorporate where a parent's going to want to come and participate with their child. And
ministry isn't easy.
And once you get somebody in the door once, then it's not so scary. Like if I just knock on your door and I'm like, hey, you want to come to church? You're like, you could be crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
It could be, I don't want to have it, but
you could be yelling at me.
Once you've come in to pick up a bag of food or to watch your kid be in a play or something like that, and you've met me and you know that I am crazy, but I'm not going to kill you crazy.
Yeah.
And you're more comfortable with the people there, then you're much more likely to feel comfortable to, hey, okay, I will come on a Sunday. I will come try this out.
And realizing that you have people in your community around you at the same location probably is another benefit.
Right, absolutely. And there's also a lot of times I would see, I was the church lady, to a lot of these parents, like that's what they knew me as. I don't know her, I don't have a personal relationship with her, she's just the lady who comes twice a week and picks up my kid, and it's free babysitting or whatever, until they have a crisis in their life. And then I don't have a pastor, I don't have a Christian friend, who am I going to, I'll call that church lady that comes and gets my kids, and then they call me and say, hey, I know you don't know me, but this has happened in my life, and I need you to come pray with me, or I need you to whatever. And then, so I start to build those relationships, and that's kind of how God pushed me into pastoring adults.
Sure.
And
that's cool.
So when I finally decided, okay, this is my calling, this is what I'm going to do, then I had to go to school and because you have to have that knowledge to back it up too. So I did
literal biblical knowledge.
Still doing school, but yeah. So I worked.
How long do you have to go to school?
It's like with anything else.
Like hours? Is it hours or?
Yeah, I did a 2-year program to be ordained in the Wesleyan Church, which is, so for 2 years I worked online, and I'm good. I could just be done and that's it, but that's not who I am. So I kind of feel like the more you're pouring out into other people, you have to be pouring into yourself. So I actually just last week
That's a good way to put that.
I am now doing my bachelor's in biblical studies, and
That's really cool.
I may stop there. I may keep going. Who knows? But I feel like especially with having 2 campuses, I do 2 Bible studies a week, 2 sermons a week, 2 online services a week. That's a lot of information to be putting out, and I
You
gotta
need to
have
be
it
on.
coming in
Yeah.
too,
You
or
need to
I'm
be
gonna
on all
get
the
stagnant,
time.
you know.
Yeah.
And
You're not
it's,
learning, you're doing yourself
right,
a disservice.
exactly.
Well,
So, you know, my husband, when I first started talking about going back to school, he was like, "How can you afford to do that with your time, with your schedule?" And I just really felt, the more I prayed about it, like, how can I afford not to?
Sure.
You know, like, there's so many
That's so
people
beautiful.
that I speak into, like, I owe it to them to
That's really beautiful.
to better myself. Well, thank you.
Yeah, well, it's just, I feel when I'm around, you know, your group of people, and it's my group of people now, too.
Right.
You know, I've been coming
We
for
snuck
so
you
long.
right in, don't we?
You know, I'm part of the family now, you know what I
Right.
mean? I made it through the initiation. And,
Right.
and,
don't tell your audience what the initiation is.
Yeah. But I just feel like you guys are less hypocritical than most of the churches I've been involved in. I get upset when I feel like we all have the same feelings when we're sitting down in church together, but then we all, you know, hate on each other, talk garbage on each other afterwards, and it's just like a frustrating
Right.
way to be. Is that, you know, we need to be ministering to these people instead,
Right.
and trying to educate them. If you think they are worse off than you, or you think they're
Right.
doing something wrong,
Right.
that's the whole point of the church, is to educate and help better other people.
Right.
And I don't know if it's because you're like a younger pastor and you're newer into this and you're excited about it.
Maybe.
Because I feel like,
relatable to a younger crowd.
yeah,
even, you know?
sometimes I feel like the
Maybe.
youth pastor at the church is the guy that everybody likes, you know what I mean?
Right.
But then maybe it's also because you're doing this ministry.
There's
Yeah.
also something to be said on the converse side of that. I found a lot of comfortability in the Southern Baptist Church in North Carolina, and they
Sure.
made me feel at home,
Sure.
somewhere I've never felt before. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And that's I don't know if it's necessarily being more relatable to a younger crowd, not to necessarily counter what I said earlier, but maybe it's something to do with your ability to reach the number of people you are
Right.
and the ability to impact
I
the
think
way you're doing.
I think people know when you're genuine.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a calling
You know,
versus
right.
a
Right.
forcing
There you
it
go.
thing.
People know
Yeah.
when you genuinely care about them, and
Sure.
that's, you have a lot more opportunity to speak into somebody if they know you care about them. You know, like if I just want to walk around and point at everybody and say, you know, this is your sin and this is your sin and this is what God's going to be angry with you about, and this, you know, they don't want to hear that. But when I build that relationship first, and they know that I care about them and that I'm speaking from love, not from judgment, then they are a little more open to hearing.
Yeah.
Maybe I do need to work on this in my
Yeah.
life, or maybe, you know,
Sure.
this is something I could do. But I think that being genuine is a big thing. And, you know, Eric, you're talking about, you know, churches being hypocrites, and I get that. And almost, you know, if I had $1 for every time somebody came to me who won't come to church because they were hurt by another church in the past, I would be retired and done with this. But you know, it's important to remember that churches are people. You know, a church is not, it's not the building, it's not the organization. The church is people who are serving Jesus, and people are not perfect. You know, people are a mess. And whether it's in your workplace or in your family or whatever, anytime you've got a group of people, you're going to have personalities that clash. You're going to have, you know, traditions that don't make sense to some people but really mean a lot to other people. And so, you know, there are a lot of churches that that don't, I guess, love on people well sometimes, but, you know, it's because we're made up of people, and people
Sure.
are a
Right.
mess.
Yeah.
They're an absolute mess.
So again, it's not, you know, and that's where you have to, you know, kind of watch yourself. You know, if you're a religious person, you know, you want to try and make sure that you're not judging, you know, others. You want to just,
Right.
again, reach out to them.
You're not putting the
Right.
person
Hey.
forward, you're putting
Right.
the faith forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe that's some of our younger
Right.
naivete that we've kind of
Right.
picked up in our
And that doesn't
immaturity,
mean,
if you will.
that doesn't mean that we encourage sin, or we, you know, like, just
No.
because I can spend time with people who are rough sometimes, you know, so you
I
guys
saw a
have seen
gentleman
some,
last week who was very much under the influence of drugs.
absolutely,
And the music leader, I don't know,
yeah.
Angie,
Yeah.
she was out there very
just loving on him.
kindly trying to give
Yes.
him directions. He had
Yeah.
no idea where
And-
he was.
But just loving on him, and the thing is, it's not, we don't encourage that behavior. You know, I wish he wasn't in that place in his life. I wish he, you know, he was doing something different,
Right.
but it doesn't
Come
make
as
me
you are, right?
doesn't make me love him any less. Exactly.
Right.
And at some point in that man's life, he might get to a place where he wants to get better, and when he thinks about that church, he'll remember that was a place where we showed him love.
Yeah.
Even when he was at
Right.
his worst, and when he wants to get better, he might come back.
Well, I feel
And-
like some churches don't necessarily have that same like drive in the
Mindset.
back of their
Yeah,
mind all the
yeah.
time. You know what I mean? That same.
Yeah.
There is some sort of like judgment, and I
Right.
don't know if that's because it's an older crowd that makes up the congregation
Mhm.
a lot of the times, and they get uncomfortable with that sort of
Sometimes.
demographic.
I think sometimes Christians tend to, after a while, kind of be afraid of the world. And,
Sure.
and so it's not even so much that they're not accepting, or they just aren't actively
If you put on a
going
nice
out
shirt and you
find-
came into
right.
the house, they'd be okay with you.
Right.
But out on the street, they don't want to conversate
Right.
with you,
It's
and that's a
kind of
weird
like
thing to me.
We're gonna huddle here in our little
Yeah.
holy huddle where we're safe from
Yeah.
all those evil things in the world, but we're not called to do that. We're called to be out in the world. We're not called to be like the world, but we're called to be out in the world.
Exactly.
And that is. But I can see why
It
they fall
frustrates
into
me
that trap,
sometimes.
because the world is a scary place.
But it frustrates me
Yeah.
sometimes. When I
Yeah.
read the Bible as a kid, I'd got in some trouble, a little backstory, I got in a little trouble as a kid, and my mom literally took everything from my room
Mhm.
but my mattress and the Bible.
Nice.
Oh,
That's all I
Good job,
had.
Mom. Good job,
That's
Mom.
all I had. That's all I had in my room.
Shout out Eric's mother.
And and I read a lot of the First Testament, and I remember reading in the Bible that it says you don't pray in front of a crowd.
Right.
Our Bible says you don't do that
Right.
necessarily. That's not what it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be a big
Public
holy
display.
event, and
Right.
I feel like that's what a lot of that holy huddling is,
Yes.
as you called it.
It's a
I
lot
feel
of
like
holy
that's a
huddling,
lot of
yeah.
a lot of
Evangelist
I
attitude.
tithed. Oh hey
Yeah.
hey, good to see you. Hey we're here doing this
Right.
thing together,
Right.
and it's cool to be doing the thing together. But it's cool to
Right.
be reaching out to the world
It
and
is.
doing the
There's
thing
a difference
together.
between going to church and being the church.
Yeah.
And, going to church is important. It is really, I value that Sunday morning and Sunday afternoon worship service more than any other time in my week, because that's when we come together and we focus on just God and just worshiping and just spending time together and encouraging each other, and we need that. But you don't go to church and clock in and then clock out and then go, you
Right.
have to
Yeah.
be the church
Right.
all the time.
You're not
and
leaving your feelings.
But at the same
Right.
time, like, as much fun as it was for you, and as much as you want to talk about it,
Oh,
as
yeah,
much as
that's-
I love talking about it, like, when you go to church, you get excited and you
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
tell people about it.
Right.
It's a
But
happy
then sometimes that's off-putting.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, you have to be, and I think part
Sometimes
of
the
it
church
is-
for you isn't the church for everybody.
Right, exactly.
Just
And
the
that
same way as a
is
kid might be put down for speaking of the church in the home.
Yeah.
It
Right.
could be a similar
Yeah.
circumstance.
You've got
Right.
different political beliefs, you've got
Right.
different, religious beliefs.
and that's kind of
or
how
moral beliefs
denominations,
around your religion.
to go
Yeah.
back to denominations, that's kind of what the idea behind that is, because there are some churches, I'm a pastor, there are some churches I would walk in right now and not feel comfortable in, because we worship differently, or because, there are a lot of churches that would not even recognize me as a pastor because I'm a woman, more than you think.
Whoa.
It's,
That's weird.
women
That's
in
crazy
ministry
stuff.
is kind of a taboo. There are a lot of churches that do not support that at all, which on the surface, the look on your face, I
Yeah.
wish we could publish right now, but I feel the same way. But at the same time, the body of Christ expresses itself in lots of different ways for that reason, because there are some people who are drawn to the more hallelujah and
Sure.
Pentecostally, and then there are some people who need more of like a Roman Catholic, quiet and serenity and whatever, and that's okay too. We're all worshiping the same God, we just do it in a different way.
Sure.
And I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. But that is there are some denominations
That makes me want to go to all denominations.
yeah.
Like,
there are some denominations that play well together, play well with
Yeah.
others, and there are some that don't. And so that's what when I'm saying, it's easier for me to call a Wesleyan pastor, because they know that I'm not I'm coming from the same place you're coming, you know, and this is what I'm doing.
From
and
my
this is what
upbringing,
I'm
I've
doing.
always felt weird about a Methodist person from a Baptist upbringing. I
Right.
always thought that was a weird thing.
Yeah.
I always thought they had weird
Yeah,
ideals.
Baptists and Methodists are, but actually doctrinally Baptists and Methodists are a lot closer than like a Catholic and a Methodist.
Sure,
Or,
okay.
you know, there are, you guys are, we're going to go down a rabbit hole. You're going to do a whole different show. Because, I've spent a lot of time looking into the different doctrines and theologies of different denominations and stuff.
Well,
And
there's nothing wrong with having you back to talk
there's
a little more about it.
Yeah, honestly.
We'll have a little theology 101.
I want to have you on with John here soon and
Yeah,
have you guys
that'd be
do just
great.
like a full community
Shoot, we
update.
might
Yeah.
be able to do that with the next update if that's something
Yeah.
that's available
Yeah,
for the
sure.
two of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I just can't believe how much this has grown recently.
Yeah, it is great. And
Like-
when it first started, the lady from the United Way, Sarah, that's one of the things that she said to me in the very beginning. She said, "This is going to get really bad, and then it's going to get better, and then it's going to get worse." She was like psychic about it. I mean,
Yeah.
she nailed it.
Yeah.
And so what we're seeing now is, you know, so there was that initial lockdown. And then things started to get a little bit normal, and there was all that unemployment money coming in, and all those extra food stamps, and all of those things that were trying to make things better. But now we're on the back end of it, where that economic crunch is really starting to creep in, and so you know.
I didn't even think about that.
it
We've been talking a lot
wasn't-
about second
yeah.
stimulus being there.
70% versus 40% is
Yeah.
almost nothing if you don't have an income in the
Right,
first place.
absolutely. And, you know, those stimulus
me.
checks are long gone by now, and it is, so what we're seeing is, you know, everyone kept saying in the beginning, you can't shut the economy down, you can't shut the economy down, and then, on the surface, it looked like it was going to be okay, because we had all these extra benefits and things, but it was really just putting a Band-Aid on, you know, something that needed stitches.
Right.
So we are, you know, we're on the back end of that now, and we're starting to feel that economic
But
crunch.
it's like we were talking about last week, you know, the only way to keep going is to build from the ground up.
Right.
You can't beg from the high person on the hill and say, "Hey, please, we need help. We need help,"
And
because
expect it to trickle down.
it's
Right.
not going to come down.
No.
And if it does, it's going to take a very long time to get down from that high hill.
Right.
We have to share with our community now
Mhm.
and help each other out.
Yep. And, you know, that is
The church ideal.
right. And the
Yeah.
end game is always, you know, it's not just feed a meal. It is how, you know, how can we enable these people to become sufficient on their own, you know, and to not need it. And to,
Same with the pet pantry.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And to
We're here to be that, you
to
know, that
feed,
net.
you
Give
know,
them the tools to.
right.
Yeah.
One of the coolest things that I see as a pastor is when somebody that, and it plays out in all different kinds of ways. So somebody that is an addict that comes out of recovery and then reaches out to an addict and pours into them, or somebody who used to come to us because they needed food every week, and now they're stable and they're donating to the pantry, or somebody, you know, it's kind of that turnaround in, I needed to be served and now I'm ready to serve.
Sure.
And that's always, you know, to me, that's a real sign that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. You
Yeah.
know, we're not
Yeah.
just feeding people, we're pouring into their lives.
That's
You're
awesome.
instilling a really good attitude in
Yeah.
the community.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and we
Right.
spoke a lot about that, like Eric said last week, about instilling that ideal in the community.
Right.
Build it from the ground up. Let
Right.
others around you eat too. You know?
Right. And, you know, there was a time when we first went there where nobody really knew their neighbors, nobody really, and I grew up in that. I grew up on 13th Street, so I
Yeah.
grew up literally 3 blocks from where I'm
But
serving
anymore,
now.
those people don't want to come off their porch.
It's not right. It is very
not
much,
safe almost.
It's this is my little island in this neighborhood, and this is where I'm going to stay.
This is where
But
safety
now
is.
I see people who, you know, will come to me and say, "Oh, so and so at this house over here twisted her ankle, and I'm going to take her food down to
Aw.
her." And you know, and just things like that where they're watching out for each other, and they know, you know, Larry. We all love Larry.
Good old Larry. You
Larry.
didn't get to meet Larry
Yeah.
last
Yeah.
week,
Oh,
but
next time we'll make sure you meet
All
Larry.
right.
But
All
you
right.
know,
Well,
Larry
well,
comes and gets his bag, and then he comes back and gets one for his neighbor,
Yeah.
and
If he can make it.
and if he can make it, and if he is, it depends on what time he got started that morning, but But the other neighbors will see Larry carrying and help him and carry the bags back to his house for him.
Well, and just the same as, you guys and the other neighbors watch out for him if he's not making it that day.
On days when he's having a rough day, we
in the yard, hey, you doing okay over there, Larry? Yeah.
But yeah, they do. They're
all right, just checking, Larry.
They're knowing each other's names and building that community, and that's really important.
It's awesome for me to jump in the community too. Yeah, it's super
cool.
neat. Super neat.
It is very cool.
What was it like to add the pet pantry in there too, though?
So the pet pantry was obviously John's baby.
Right, and Doug, they came up with that.
Yes, they came up with this.
How did they approach you with that? Because you're the biggest outlet for it right now.
Yeah, so they just messaged me. Well, John messaged me and said, my friend Doug's dog just died.
Oh.
I'd like to provide pet food for people that we serve.
Yeah.
And name it after Molly, the dog. And so that's how we came up with Molly's Pet Pantry. And it's so needed. I mean, I have people who come on the Tuesdays when we hand out groceries. I have people who come that don't even want human food. They just came to get cat food for their cats or dog food for their dogs, or so they are they're really blessed by it, and it is something that's really helpful. And I've heard a little bit of negativity about it because people are like, well, if they're so poor they can't afford food, then they shouldn't have a pet, whatever. But a lot of people, that's their companion.
That's exactly,
and they need that companionship, and they need that friendship, and
especially if you don't have a home.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Some of these people don't have homes.
Yes.
And to take the one thing away from them that would bring them love and friendship all the time.
Right.
I couldn't imagine.
So yeah, it's a blessing to be able to have that and provide that for people, and there's a lot of work that goes into that, and my plate is already so full that I haven't even really had anything to do with that, but
the
Eric
storage and everything.
You guys have done so.
We've taken over your
good
space,
with that.
though.
No, but it's great. I love it, and they bag up all that food, and that is a project. Gracie had to help with that a couple weeks ago and do a couple bags of cat food for me, but. Just the whole process of collecting it and storing it and bagging it.
Oh my God! All of the volunteers are awesome. I mean, even
yeah.
just that your kids want to get involved is super
absolutely.
cool.
But
that they're involved not only in that, but in the ministry as well.
Yeah, they're pretty cool about that. So, but yeah, it is. It's cool. It's a good addition to have to it. It's something nice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There's definitely a lot of cat food and dog food in that front little room.
Absolutely.
It's definitely starting to run over.
So I think about a lot of times how like I said, we have that 3:00 service, so a lot of times people from other churches will come, and I always think about, what is their first impression of us when they walk in the front door, because it's like, there's a grill, and some dog food and cat food, and possibly a soccer ball.
I've never even thought about that.
But I just always think, if somebody comes in for Sunday worship, what? But then, that's who we are, what I mean? So, if you walk in, and that's your first impression, and you're not okay with it.
Not to mention the bags of clothes.
Probably not the church for you, if that's going to be a major turn off.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
Back to that uptight circle thing.
That's interesting.
Oh, it's amazing.
That is pretty good. Now, what's some of the nothing too risque, if you will, but what's some of the funnier stories you got? What's some of the interesting things you've seen? I mean, I'm sure you said 10 years, a whole decade.
Yeah,
I'm sure
there have been some moments. So just at the 14th Street Church in the 2 years, Grace might have a couple to add into, but so there was a police chase that ended in a car running over our front sign and parking in our bushes. We have had a drunk man literally walk in the middle of service and stagger down the aisle and then just fall on the altar while I was preaching.
The Lord compelled him.
He did. He got him up off that bar stool and brought him into church.
That's what Angie always says.
Yeah.
That's what Angie always says, the worship leader. She always says, that's what's amazing about it. She always says it's amazing that we had, an intoxicated person, no matter what it is, they're under the influence of at church. And, it's funny, almost when you hear her say it, that's just amazing that they were there. And you're like, that's weird. Why do you know, why is that cool? And you're like, no, it's really cool.
Yeah.
Because they got up and they got there.
In the weakest of moments, that's where their head went.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, there's lots of interesting moments. Last summer, we came to church and found a dead cat in a box on the porch with a poem.
Oh,
And
no
so,
way.
Yeah, so that was a little alarming. Like, that was one of those, do we call the police?
Yeah.
Or, like, is there a serial killer?
Is it a warning?
Like, right. Like, is this my version of the horse head? I get a dead cat in a box on my church porch. So, yeah, so we ended up, but what it was somebody who we knew that we have ministered to, and he found this cat, and in his state of mind, he thought, I'll take it to the church, and so it was kind of his form of like
Sending it off.
burying it and sending it
Oh,
off.
wow.
Yeah, so that was kind of an
Like you said, in his
interesting-
state of mind.
Oh, I don't know why I didn't lead with this one. Okay. So,
Oh, we got a good one.
okay, so this is really sad, and I feel like a horrible person that I'm laughing at this. It's more the way I found out about it, but I did the clothing giveaway. A girl came. She was homeless. She wanted a shower, so Angie took her to the Y, because the Y will let us bring people there so they can use the showers.
That's awesome.
Yes,
That's really cool.
shout out to the Y. They're fantastic about that. But
The YMCA over there on
YMCA on Broad Street.
On Broad Street.
So
Yeah,
they'll
that's
let,
really,
they'll let
really
us bring
sweet.
people there to shower. We are actually in the process of building a shower at 14th Street,
Oh,
but
really?
it's a process.
It's a
Yeah,
process.
It's a
no
process.
kidding.
Yeah.
Water lines are fun, right?
So yeah.
It's all the partnerships that you can get.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
awesome.
But so she took her to get a shower, and they were on their way back, and this girl obviously felt indebted to Angie because she had taken her to get a shower. So she said, "You know, there's people that live under your church, right?" And Angie said, "Say what?"
Oh my goodness.
And so this girl proceeds to tell her that when she first became homeless, people were telling her you can get underneath that church on 14th Street. And so Angie calls me and tells me this, and I'm at the church, and I'm like, there's no way. So I walk out back, and I open up the crawl space, and
There's people in there?
There is a community of people
Oh my
who
goodness.
have
Like in
been-
there currently as you open the
not
door.
when I opened the door, but they
Oh,
had like sheets hanging, like marking off
Like
different
stalls
rooms.
almost.
Yeah, and just this whole.
No way.
So you know where the fellowship hall is, like
Yeah.
the dining room.
Yeah.
The crawl space.
The whole length.
The crawl space is about 3.5 feet high.
Sure.
And it runs the whole length of that building, and it's so I mean it's
Wow.
just full from back to front of
That's
people living under my church. So they're clearly gone during the day when we're there,
Right.
and then they come back in.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, what do you even do about that?
Do you let him stay there?
My heart says yes. My insurance policy says absolutely not.
Oh.
So so like
My mom would have been with you on that.
Yes.
When she worked insurance for 41
yeah.
years.
So we took a box of food, and we left a note and just said, hey, this is our number. This is how you guys get a hold of us. We'd love to help you get in. You can't stay here, but whatever.
Yeah.
So, but it was like an actual process getting these people out from under.
I had to evict them.
This was in December, and it was March before
Oh,
we got the
no.
last people out. And it
Because
was.
it's so cold.
It
Yeah,
was,
I
and
know.
it was like the coldest snap of that winter. It
Yeah.
was like really, really brutal cold time. And so like one night we were having Bible study there, and we were in that dining area, and we're all sitting around the tables, and I'm praying, and as I say amen, we hear under the floor.
I was just
Oh,
about to
my
So we have
goodness.
visitors who, of course, don't realize that there's people living under the church. So I'm just like, anyway, so back to the, like, it's so
I was just
awkward.
about to ask.
But yeah, I
Well,
mean,
you
like,
can't
what,
tell people.
what other pastor can say
Oh, that's
that
so
there
funny.
was literally a community of people living underneath the floor of your church? Like, the
Oh,
only,
Was
my
there ever that
goodness.
moment where you
Only
thought you
at the
heard
gathering.
something with them? you
Yeah,
know?
well, the
Oh,
funniest thing is my mom kept telling me, my mom cleans the church.
Sure.
And so she would be
She's
there.
so sweet.
And she would
She
call
was.
me and be like, I swear I heard somebody in the church. But I walked all around and I just thought she was crazy. I mean, she is crazy, but I thought like that was just her.
There's an angel in the church, you know.
Lo and behold, she was really hearing people, and that's what was going on. Yeah.
What do you think's the end, though?
Oh, Jesus comes back and we all go to heaven. I've read the end.
No, I don't mean that. I mean
that's pretty good. I like that. That was a pretty finite question there, Eric. What do you think about that, buddy?
The end for the ministry.
Sure.
I don't think there is an end
Do you have
to
a
the
current
ministry. I mean, my goal is always just to see lives changed, and
Sure.
it is. I don't think you can put an end on that. There's never going to be a shortage of people that need help. So
right.
You know, we collect all the weirdos we can and we minister to them, and then when they're all good, we go out and we find more weirdos. That's what we do.
More weirdos.
I like weirdos.
That's beautiful.
We do.
Myself,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I could not imagine pastoring any other congregation than the one that I have.
That's
It
amazing.
is, you know, they are colorful and fun, but they are definitely who God has called me to serve. So.
There
Definitely.
any future protege you're looking to take under your wing?
I'm hoping this one over here, but
Sure.
she's probably going to run screaming as
Miss
far
Gracie.
as far from ministry as she can get. But yeah,
We'll see.
Yeah,
Maybe we'll
we'll
bring her
see.
back on the weekends.
We'll
We've kind of
see.
taken her job here recently,
Yeah.
you know.
The
We'll
future
see if
holds
we can
many
bring her
things,
back on the
right?
weekends,
That's
maybe.
right.
The future holds many things. Yeah, for sure. But the future, speaking of the future, so what's the schedule?
So
Make sure we got the
right
schedule.
now, okay. So right now we are on Sundays. We do 10:30 morning service at Southside.
Okay.
We do a 3:00 afternoon service on 14th Street. We do an online at 7 o'clock on Facebook.
Okay.
Mondays there's not really anything public we deliver, but Tuesdays we do food pantry from 4 to 5 at 14th Street, and then we do Bible study at 6:30 on 14th Street. Wednesdays we do Bible study online at 7. Thursdays we do food pantry from 4 to 5 at Southside. Fridays we have movie night at Southside on the front campus. We're watching The Chosen right now, which
Okay.
is 10 out of 10 would recommend. If you guys have not seen, I think you guys would even enjoy it. It's
Sure.
really, really cool. It's a retelling of the life of Christ and his disciples, but they take like a lot of liberties, and
Sure.
it kind of it's really,
Quite dramatic.
Really, really cool. Download the app, The Chosen. You can only watch it on the app, but you can
Oh.
watch it for free on the app.
That's
Wow.
really
It's
cool.
all crowdsourced. It's the biggest
That's
crowdsourced. It's
awesome.
the biggest crowdsourced project in history so
Oh,
far.
wow.
They
That's
did
super
the
cool.
whole first season crowdsourced, and when you watch it, you will be amazed that it is crowdsourced. It is fantastic. Watch it. So anyway, we're watching that episode 6 this Friday,
Okay.
and then on Saturdays we do.
That's tomorrow. But
yeah, I'm.
wait, this
I don't-
isn't
right,
going out.
right.
Yeah,
This
we-
is whenever this goes out. On Fridays we watch
Yeah.
The Chosen, and then Saturdays we always do the community meal at 4. Sometimes we do clothing giveaways if we have stuff available, or if it's not pouring the rain down. And then right now we're also picking up dairy boxes from the Rock Church and distributing those.
shout out to the Rock Church.
Yes,
Yeah.
the Rock is awesome. And I have heard a rumor that in about 3 weeks that is going to change and be dairy, produce, and meat,
Oh.
which
Wow.
that's like a game changer. So that is, I'm really excited to hear more about that. I don't know what that's going to look like exactly, but I think it's going to be really, really cool for the families that we serve.
That
So,
sounds really
That's
awesome.
insane.
yeah. So
Branching out, serving
That's
even
super cool.
so that's our week in a nutshell.
more. All right.
You're just
All right.
busy all the time.
Yeah.
I
it's just-
am. Yeah.
How do you find time to
And
write
others.
sermons
and take college classes
and
Take
take
college
care of your
classes.
and raise
children?
4 kids.
Yeah.
Old school.
You know, you just
You pray about it.
a lot of
There
that
you go.
stuff though. I can multitask. You know what I mean? So like when I'm writing sermons, I'm also like, or when I'm doing my classwork, a lot of that stuff will kind of pour into what I'm studying or what I'm reading.
Sure.
And I have a lot of real life illustrations for my sermons every week. I
Definitely.
have lots of fresh motivation.
You're out there doing it.
Which
You're
is-
in the
What you're saying
world.
is You are amazing at
I
multitasking.
am very
Yeah.
good at multitasking.
Well,
yes.
we
And-
appreciate you giving us your time.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
well,
seriously.
I appreciate this. This is fun and this is cool that you guys do this.
Yeah.
We appreciate you
I
spending
hope it
some time
keeps
here.
growing and.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Same to you,
Definitely.
Mel. Come on now. Same to you.
Yeah.
Same to you.
We'll get up to 300 eventually at that curb meal there.
Yeah,
So everybody come down, experience the community,
absolutely.
and we'll get back with you on the next one.
Guys, it's been wonderful having you today. Thanks for lending an ear, and thanks for listening to Three Broken Chairs. This has been our time, guys. We'll talk to you next time.